Chips are used to show small blocks of information within inputs. Most commonly, they are used for contacts or tags. First, we see a chip being formatted to show a contact person. We see that we have a rounded small image here, and then the name of the person, all formatted into a chip. Then we see a chip being used with a tag, which can be deleted by clicking on this close icon. We can also have an input here where we can add our own chips. So for example, I can add HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and so on. We can also have initial chips being preloaded into this input here. So we have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and we can optionally choose to add an image as well, as we have done here with the JavaScript element. And we can of course add more tags here. We can also specify a placeholder to be showed. Here we see enter a tag. When I've entered my first tag, we see another placeholder that says plus tag. So there's two different placeholders to use. Finally, we can have a chips with autocomplete feature. So here I have 4 countries being specified in the code. If I, for example, type the D, I will see some of the available countries here. And I can start spelling, and I can select what country I want and add it as a chip to the input. All right, let's go ahead and see how we create all of this. First, we need a wrapping element, which will be a div tag with the class chip. This is for creating the chip to display a contact person. Then we'll add an image from our image folder, which will be the image called 50x50.png. We'll give it the alt text, contact person, and then next to it we'll add a space and the name. In this case, we'll just add contact person. Let's save, go back in the browser, select the right tab and refresh. Here we see our chip formatted to display the contact person. Let's continue to display this as a tag. Once again, we'll add the wrapping element, a div tag with the class chip. Inside of this, we'll first add our tag, which is just tag, and then the close icon, which is an I tag with the classes material icons and close, and then also the text close. The text here will specify the icon, and the close class will make it be possible to delete this tag when we click on the close icon. So this is hooking up with some JavaScript functionality in Materialize. Let's save, go back and refresh. Here we see our tag with the label or the tag name and the close button, and when we click on it, it disappears. Let's see how we can have the input where we can add chips to it. Once again, we add the wrapping element, a div tag with the class chips. This time we doesn't need to specify anything inside, but we'll add an ID so we can create our JavaScript for this. We call the ID chips add. And then we scroll down to add a script tag in the very bottom here. First, we'll now get this element. So we have a variable called chips add element. And then we write document get element by ID. And that ID is, as we just saw, chips add. Now we'll create the instance of this. So we add another variable called chips add instance, and we need to write m.chips.init and pass in the selector here, chips add element, just like so. Let's save this, go back in the browser and refresh. Now we see this input here where we can specify chips to be added to that line. We can erase a chip again if we want and add other chips. Now let's see how we can create this with initial chips being displayed on load. So to do this, we create the wrapping element again with the class chips, and this time we get the ID chips initial. We close the div tag again, scroll down the bottom here. Now we'll create a new variable called chips initial element, document get element by ID chips initial, like so. Now we will specify an options object using another variable called chips initial options, and we'll now pass in this data here as an array, and the first object will be tag, the tag property with the value HTML. After this, just copy this. We'll have CSS, and then finally here we'll have JavaScript, and it's also possible to add an optional image to display together with this tag. So we'll do this and specify that image to be the same as we used earlier, the 50x50.png image. Finally, we now need to initialize this as an instance. So chips initial instance m.chips init, and then the element chips initial element, comma, and the options chips initial options. All right, let's save this, go back and refresh. Here we see our input with the 3 chips being displayed, and the third one has the image. We can erase these if we want, and we can add more. All right, let's see how we can add a placeholder for our input. We will add the element up here, a div tag with the class chips, and the ID this time will be chips placeholder. Now let's scroll back down and let's just copy this code here. We'll change chips initial to be chips placeholder, like so. Now we'll change the content of our options variable here. Now we have erased everything, and we'll now add the placeholder property with the value enter a tag, a comma, and then we have a secondary placeholder that we can use. This will be displayed when one or more tags have been entered. The first one will be displayed when it's empty and no chips has been entered. All right, let's save this, go back and refresh. Here we see the first placeholder, enter a tag, because we haven't entered any tags or added any chips. Now when we enter one, it will change to display the secondary placeholder, which is plus tag. When we remove all of our chips here, we can see it changes to the first placeholder again. Finally, let's see how this works with autocomplete. So we'll go back, we'll create our last example, div tag, the class chips, and the ID will be chips autocomplete, like so. Back down here, we'll copy the code from the previous example, and we'll now update these values here. Chips placeholder will be chips autocomplete, so it will now get the element with the ID autocomplete. And now the options to specify here. Autocomplete options here, colon. Then like this, we add our data. We have Denmark, the value null. This value must be null to work. Then we have Finland, Norway, and finally Sweden. Now let's take a final look in the browser. We'll refresh. Now if I type S, we can see that Sweden shows. If I type D, all these three shows. If I type O, Norway shows. I can now select from this list of autocomplete, but I can also add my own if I want. This was all about how to use the chips component.